Hello and welcome to the live Facebook session of AAA, which is a resource box, and the participants are still joining in. A bit of an introduction about myself. I am 𝗏𝗏 𝗥𝗲, and I am the lead of product management team at SKANS Ecampus. And SKANS Ecampus has been in the market for around 3 years now. SKANS has been giving tuition to ACCA students for more than 2 decades now. And we have finally developed ourselves and excelled into the global market, to the global community. And we have been serving through excellent study support of ACCA. And today we are joined in by 𝗏𝗏 𝗨𝗏, who is teaching the AAA, or the Advanced Audit Assurance paper at SKANS Ecampus. She has been in the teaching industry for more than 15 years now, and she's an ACCA member and CIA qualified. And she has been with SKANS Ecampus since its inception. And she is, you can say, she has developed this whole product into what it is now. And so it's a great honor to be joined by her in this session, and we are really thankful for her to give time to this session. And I would just like to move over to 𝗏𝗏 𝗨𝗏 to give a bit of introduction about how she is seeing the current scenario of the world and how the tuition has changed over this past, you can say, year. So over to you, 𝗏𝗏.
Thank you so much, Bilal. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the session today. I think in the past year, of course, because we are now in the middle of the, I can't even say, post-COVID era, because we're still there. The way we study has changed, of course. I think the concept of eCampus has become all the more important. We've had to manage our work, if you're working from home, our studies, because I do genuinely believe that it's slightly more difficult just being at home 24/7 and managing your, family commitments and exams and all of that. So I think studying has become challenging in one aspect, but at the same time, with courses that eCampuses offer, I'm not just talking about SKANS Ecampus, I'm talking about all digital learning offerings. There's so much flexibility that students, particularly, I think, should be finding it easier to study for the ACCA exam, because with the rigor that the ACCA examiners test and the knowledge that you're expected to have and the extensive practice that is required from all of you, the added time can be and should be an advantage for all of you. So even if you haven't studied with the eCampus, SKANS Ecampus, even if you've studied through, another digital learning partner or studied by yourself, this is a time where you should have, prepared better and be in a better position to pass the exam as well. So I think because COVID is not something that we could have managed, it wasn't in our control, it's not in our control. So we might as well adapt to it. And the easiest way to do that is think of this as a positive thing and just start working, to be honest.
Right, okay, thank you. So if you move on to Advanced Audit and Assurance paper, which is your specialty and which we are dealing with right now. So if you can give a bit of an introduction of the paper for those who are going to attempt this paper in the coming attempts. If you can just briefly.
Yeah. So if I just, I'm assuming, because it's the 28th today, so I'm assuming those of you who are taking the paper in December, you would have been through your basic knowledge portion. So I'll just summarize the introduction. Of course, this is a step up from the AA exam. This is very different from AA. AA had a lot of knowledge that you were expected to know and reproduce. There was a lot of knowledge-based testing in AA. AAA is completely different. There's very little learning that needs to take place for this exam. The exam structure is such that you have question number 1, which is a 50-mark case study. The examiner has specified that this will be set at the planning stage of audit, and there's definitely going to be at least 25 marks from risk assessment, and it's going to be combined with audit procedures, ethical issues, etc. Section B is going to have two 25-mark questions, one of which is certainly going to be from the completion reporting stage of audit, and the second 25-mark question can be from any part of the syllabus. I think it's very important that we break down the syllabus into 3 parts. So we have the first part, which is ethical and professional considerations, regulatory. And yet this is an area that students struggle with a lot. Then you have the second, which is the biggest portion, which is external audit. Please remember, you could be given an individual company or the audit of consolidated financial statements. And questions come from planning, procedures, completion, the entire stage of audit. And then the third one is other assignments. And that's the area that most of us don't take very seriously. However, this is an area, if this comes up in an exam, are very, very easy marks. So, for example, if there's a question on due diligence, for say 7 marks would be scenario linked, but there would be about this many marks which are discussion based as well. So how is due diligence different from audit, or advantages of getting a due diligence done for a potential target company, etc., etc. So at this point in time, Bilal, I think my introduction to the paper needs to focus on the fact that the entire syllabus has to be covered. There's absolutely no room for question spotting or thinking, oh, this came up in September, it's not going to come up in December. That doesn't happen in AAA. Or selective studying. You can't say, I'm not comfortable with forensic, I could skip it. Because the examiner has over and over again said that students who complete the paper have a much higher chance of getting through the exam as well. So, well, this was pretty much a very fast forward version of the introduction or the overview of the entire paper.
Right. Thank you. Thank you for giving that introduction. So before going on and taking on questions, I would like to just add that you can both message us and comment any questions that you have. And we would like to take the questions which are part of the current discussion during the discussion. And if there are any questions which are not related to that, but they are related generally to AAA, then we will taking them in the Q&A session, which would happen after we are done with the format that we have decided. So you can put in any questions that in the comments and we'll take them on. So generally we do, as you know, that many students, when they are coming on in the strategic level examination, and this is one of those papers which come after many of the papers which they have passed currently. So one of the questions that students do put up and candidates do put up, and it's discussed in forums, it's discussed in many different places, that what are those easy marks that a student can gain in this specific paper? So if you're talking about AAA paper, what are those easy marks that a student can gain, which can save them potential time? Because it's a lengthy paper. Yes,
I completely agree. Okay, so I've done, and this is very interesting because I've done this evaluation for a couple of papers. So if you could actually go to the ACC website, have a look at the published papers and answers, and you'd actually agree with me on this as well. There are some very, very easy marks on materiality calculations. So in question number 1, 4 confirmed marks on materiality calculation. In question number 2 and 3, it could be 2 or 3 additional marks. So I'm thinking across the entire 100-mark paper, you could have at least 5 to 6 materiality calculation marks. Now, it's important to understand what I mean by materiality calculation. A student is writing 3% of PBT, full stop. That's a 0. Although the calculation is absolutely correct, you get no marks for the calculation at all until you've written the conclusion. So you have to write, it is 3% of PBT, therefore it is immaterial. So in question number 1, there are going to be 4 risky areas that you should definitely be able to comment on. This is 7% of total assets, therefore material. This is 2% of PBT, therefore immaterial. This is 0.25% of revenue and therefore immaterial. So the first category of easy marks are the materiality marks. Like I said, a minimum of 5 in the entire 100-mark paper, out of which 4 is in question number 1. The second heading of materiality marks are the easy marks are the professional marks. Now, all the students, this is not SVL, This is not something which is very difficult for you to actually get marks in. All the students should know that there are 4 very easy professional marks in question number 1. And I always tell my students that when you talk about, if you step back for a second, I need 50 marks to pass. And out of those 50, 10 marks anyone can get, even if you haven't prepared for AAA at all. So I don't think, I'm really surprised at the AAA global pass rate not being too great, because it's always in its 30s, because there are confirmed 10 easy marks that anyone should be getting. So about 5 to 6 materiality spread across the paper. And then you have the professional marks. I'll talk about professional marks separately in a second. The third heading of the easy marks are also in question number 1, which is your analytical procedures. So I'm talking still about question number 1. We're looking at percentage change in revenue, ratios, and you could do the calculation for every risk question. So risk has gone up by 3%, 0 mark. Cost of sales has gone down by 2%, still 0. The risk is cost of sales could be understated. Now you get your calculations and your comment marks as well. So if I look at all of this holistically, question number 1, 4 materiality marks. Question number 1, 4 professional marks. Question number 1, 3 analytical procedure marks. So these 11 marks are literally the examiner handing this over to you in a tray to say, here you go, you can take these. And then you add on the materiality marks in section B and C, and you're good to go. So any student who's been through the revision kit, any student who's taken the mock exam, because it's very important that you sit the mock exam, you would know that this is something that can be done with a bit of practice.
Right. Okay, so this was all about question 1, as you're saying.
And 2 and 3. So the second section B also has about 2 materiality marks that you can get. So 11 in question number 1 and about 1 or 2 in section B.
Right. So there's a related question to this one from Ahmed Riaz. That ma'am, guide on question 3 and current issues. So if you can comment on this.
Ahmed, the examiner has said the third question can be from any part of the syllabus. So there is absolutely nothing specified. It could be from one of the other assignments. It could be a question on matters to consider in evidence. It could be a question on ethical professional consideration. So it could be from any part of the syllabus. With regards to current issues, it's very, very simple. If there's a technical article on the ACCA website regarding a current issue, then it's going to come up. Otherwise, it's not. So a few attempts ago, there was a question on an exposure draft, which was the current issue, but she'd given a technical article prior to that. So Ahmed, as far as I remember, I checked last week, there was no technical article on for the December attempt. So if that stays the same just before the 7th as well, then current issues won't come up in your exam. So question number 3, any part of the syllabus, current issue, only if there's a technical article prior to that attempt.
Right. Thank you. I hope that answers the question. So you were talking about professional marks earlier.
Yeah.
So
yes.
Yes. So if you'd like to comment on professional marks, because I think they are not much, but they are underrated because they are 4.
I think 4 marks are the difference between 46 and 50. Huh?
Exactly.
So it is literally a student who's saying, oh my God, I could have gotten those extra 2-3 marks. That's what we're looking at. You get 4 marks in question number 1, 1 mark for writing to from subject. So since September 2018, the examiner is only asking for briefing notes. So question number 1, first mark is literally writing to from subject and filling that out from the requirement. The second mark is for writing the heading of introduction and giving a 3-line introduction. Literally a 3-line to say, these briefing notes include risk assessment and evaluation of ethical issues. The third mark is for giving headings. So when you're attempting part A, B, and C in question number 1, for each risk, maybe give a separate heading. For each ethical issue, maybe have a heading. So the third mark is for headings. And the fourth mark is something you don't have to put in any effort for. All you have to do is answer the requirement and write in full English sentences. So do not use the short texting SMS language. Just make sure you're writing full sentences, answering the requirement, and you get the fourth mark automatically. She calls it the clarity of expression, but that simply means just answer the requirement and write in a proper, we're not talking about grammars and spellings. You could have horrible grammar and spellings and still get the fourth mark. So 2 from subject, number 1, introduction, number 2, headings, number 3, and pretty much answering the requirement and writing in full sentences is number 4. Those are the 4 marks that you get in the AAA exam for professional marks.
Right. Thank you. So we have another question, which is somewhat related to getting the easy marks, because I think that if you are getting the easy marks, you're basically managing your time. So it is related to that, because those are the easy marks.
I think 𝗧𝗵𝗲 has pretty much asked the same question as well.
Yes,
that
exactly.
Time management, I do not want an extra attempt. Trust me, this works. It's worked for students who write slow as well. The rule that you have to follow is I have to allocate time to each part. So question number 1, part A is 6 marks. The rule is 1.5 minutes per mark. So you multiply that by 1.5 and allocate 9 minutes writing time. So I'm going to put my watch in front of me and I'm only going to spend 9 minutes on writing the answer, even if I know this amazingly well. The minute my 9-minute mark is up, I'm going to put a full stop, leave space, and start part B. Suppose part B was 10 marks, multiply by 1.5, 15 minutes. Writing time available is 15 minutes. Even if I knew so many more risks, I'm going to put a full stop after 15 minutes and move on to part C. So as a tutor, and I've been teaching AAA for a very long time, and I've seen students submitting their assignments and mocks, and I've sample checked them. And trust me when I say that a student who has completed the paper has a much higher chance of getting through the exam, as opposed to a person who did question number 1 brilliantly, but wasn't able to complete question number 3 at all. So I'm more than happy for you to do an average attempt, but complete the paper. You still have a greater chance of getting through. So Aasim and Raheel, to answer your questions, time manage each part, allocate it when you're first going through the question paper, and do not spend more time than that. Some of you are going to be slow in reading. Some of you are going to be slow in writing. At this age and stage, we can't change that. We could have worked on our speed when we were younger by reading more books or writing a bit more. It's too late now. So now all you can do is make sure that I'm allocating a certain time to each part and just sticking to it. Even if I know more about it, I'll come back to it later if I have any time left towards the end.
Done. So I hope that answers the question. Thank you. So moving on into our discussion, that if we talk a little bit more topic specific, because there are some topics which are more likely to come in question 1 and then in question 2 and question 3, as you explained, that there's a bit of difference in there. So if you can comment on each of the topics briefly and what is asked.
I think, and Bilal, the background to this is that of all the students who fail this exam and come back and discuss this with me, and I'm not exaggerating, there was not even one student in the past so many years that I've been teaching who's come to me and said that I failed because I didn't know the paper. No one has ever said that. It's either because I wasn't able to complete the paper, which is what we've covered, or I have no idea what happened. I was expecting to get marks in 60s and I got my marks in 30s. And this is where your techniques come in. Now, If you've studied with any learning provider or any learning partner at all, you would know that each topic has its own technique, sort of like a format or flow of information which converts your 1 mark answer into 3 marks. So I'll just give you 2 basic examples. So 2 topics which are almost, not almost, they are going to come up in every exam. The first one is ethics, your ethical considerations. Now, the technique, the answering technique for that is, please explain the threat. You can't simply say, this is self-interest, full stop. The markers are going to say, this is a 0, thank you so much, full stop. So when you say self-interest, no marks for that at all. You have to explain what the problem is. That because of financial interest, the audit firm is not going to work independently, or their judgment is going to be compromised. So when I'm writing down an ethical issue or evaluating an ethical issue, my first mark is for naming and explaining the threat. Then tell them what the code says about it. So don't jump to what I need to do right now. The second mark is the code says this is allowed if this happens, or this is not allowed at all. And then do an evaluation for the scenario. So for example, if the client is offering you a very expensive gift, this is gifts and hospitality, right? Step number 1, name and explain self-interest. So explain that because of my own interest, I'm not going to be working properly, or my judgment is going to be compromised. Then go on to explain the code says that unless there's no intention to bribe and unless the gift is immaterial, you can't accept it. So this is what the code says. And then give a conclusion that because this is an expensive gift, I have to say no. So there are actually 3 separate marks. What most students are doing is, this is not allowed, which is super for half a mark. But instead of getting 3, you literally just got half. So techniques for ethics are this. I'll just do one more because that's also about 3.5 marks. And the second technique is, remember I said risk is always going to be there in question number 1. So the second technique is for risk of material misstatement. You need to comment on materiality, and I've already discussed that as a separate mark. Then talk about what the reporting framework says about it. For ethics, I told them what the code says about this. For risk, I'm going to talk about IFRS or IAS. There are no marks for writing down the names. Just say that IAS 37 says if there's a present obligation, past event, probable outflow, a provision needs to be booked. So I'm literally mentioning what the code, the reporting framework says about this. 1 mark. The risk is that a provision has not been booked, half a mark, and therefore liability is understated, half a mark, expenses are understated, half a mark. So literally, instead of saying they've not booked a provision, 2.5 marks for saying what the reporting framework says about this. The risk is the reporting framework has not been followed, and then the financial statement impact. So when I talk about answering techniques, and then you could listen to me and fall asleep because, it's a discursive paper, so I understand it's very boring. But the main idea is that you have to practice it. Whenever, like I said, you still have plenty of time. You still have about 8 to 9 days to go. So you could still have a look at the answers in whichever revision kit you're reading. You could look at the answers from the past papers on the ACCA website. And you could see that there's a technique to risk and ethics that if you follow it properly, you could easily manage your time as well. See, Bilal, 11 easy marks that I spoke about, then risk is going to come up for around 24 marks. If you have the technique, you add those 24. Ethics is always going to be there for about 10 marks. You're good to go. So I'm just thinking that the only thing you guys need to do is sit down and practice your answering techniques. And if you haven't taken a mock exam, please do it. If nothing else, do the 3 mock exams at the end of every revision kit so that you can manage your time and apply the techniques as well. And I think I spoke too much and too fast, but that's all right.
Right. Thank you for explaining every topic that is covered. So there's a related question from Ahmed Riaz, and should we follow marking scheme or examiner answers both vary in length? And if we follow marking scheme to some extent, will it be enough to get good marks?
You follow the marking scheme. So, Ahmed, if I talk about the standard answers, please remember, and this stands true for all ACC standard answers, the examiners do not expect you to write to that extent. A lot of students across the globe do not have support for their tuition or their learning. So the standard answers are written in such a way that such students can understand that topic. And they're also a very good supporting tool for tutors as well. The students are not expected to write to that extent. So to answer your question, you follow the marking scheme. So if I give you an example of business risk, so it's 2 marks per business risk. I do not need half a page to get those 2 marks. I could simply be saying the client is currently facing a lawsuit. In terms of business risk, this could lead to a reputational damage, which is going to obviously decrease my demand, resulting in 2 basic issues. So I've explained 2 problems. The fact that my reputation is going to go down, and number 2, possibly a reduction in demand because my customers might not want to buy from me anymore. Same lawsuit, you could talk about the money that's going to flow out if I lose the lawsuit. So my entire 2-mark answer is going to be about 4-5 lines in total. And yet you're getting 2 out of 2. So please follow the marking scheme. Do not follow the extent that is written in the standard answers.
Right. As you said that, does it matter how much the length of your answer is?
No, no, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. So if I talk about, let me just so for example, self-interest threat, right? Or self-review threat. This is the self-review threat. When the auditors check their own work, they won't identify their own errors. Literally, this sentence is 1 mark. I've not written any fancy words, anything extra, just this 1 sentence, you get your mark for your threat. Politely declined, do not accept, 1 mark. We should politely decline. 4 words and you get 1 mark, because the answer is don't accept this. So no, it's not about the length, it's about what you're writing. That's what's important.
Right, because many students, because it's a theoretical paper, they are going to be thinking that if we write more, we are going to...
To be honest, not for AAA, not for any paper in ACCA.
Yes. So there's another thing that is discussed, that there's some specific terminology, if you would agree with me, that is expected by the examiner. So if you can comment a bit about that specific terminology that the examiner is looking for in your answer to specific topics.
So for both AA and AAA, the examiners normally say that there's the English language and then there's the audit language. You could know English very well, so it could be your first language, and you could still be failing this paper because you're not comfortable with the audit terms. There's no language that she needs. She just basically needs the answers to the requirement. So for example, when I say the language of risk of material misstatement, that language simply means tell me the financial statement impact. So I'm not looking for any jargon or difficult words. I'm looking for you explaining that assets could be overstated or liabilities could be understated. I am looking for under-overstatement. I'm not going to give you marks for, oh, it's gone, it's disappeared, poof, where is it? Because obviously that's not something. So I completely agree with you. The terminology that she's looking for is actually highly technical. When we're talking about the code of ethics, I can't make up the code myself. I can't sort of, create a threat and give that answer. When I talk about audit report, it is all based on terminology. I'm not going to give you marks for saying this is a clean opinion or a dirty opinion. You have to write unmodified or modified because that's what the auditing standards say. So the terminology that she's looking for is basically your auditing and accounting standards that you would know in any case because of your preparation.
Right.
Can I just quickly add, Bilal, one thing that I wanted to add, that a lot of students, instead of writing materiality, are writing significant. and they're losing those 4 to 5 easy marks that are there across the paper. So please understand, materiality is an audit concept. It's judgment. It's the basis of my, entire audit work that I'm going to do. So the word is materiality. It's not important or significant. It's material. So things like that you'll have to be very comfortable with.
Right. So I think there's right. So this was about the paper specific things and what is the examiner like asking you to write, right? But when we come about the technical aspects, which are not so much, you can say, paper specific, but they are there, and they are the common reasons, if I'd like to say that, for failure in AAA exam. As you have mentioned before, even that completeness is one of the things. If the student does not complete the paper, that's one of the main reasons for failing. So what are the other common reasons, or you can say the reasons which students skip over?
I think what we all need to know is that SBR is assumed knowledge for AAA. So any student who does not know their financial reporting to the SBR level is going to struggle in passing this exam, because audit is about accountancy that has been done, and you have to pick up and see what the problems with those areas are. So I think not knowing your financial reporting standards is another reason. I think, and this probably stands true for the entire SSC qualification, but lack of practice. And practice does not mean read the question, read the answer, read the question, read the answer. That's not practice. This is a professional qualification. You need to do some written practice as well. For discursive papers like AAA, I'm more than happy to sort of jot down your points, then compare them with the answer. But for each topic, at least 1 or 2 questions have to be done by hand entirely. So lack of practice, obviously time management is a huge issue. In AAA, not knowing your basic accounting or not being able to identify accounting issues is a huge element. I remember there was a question, and it's there on the website as well. It goes by the name of Audrey. There was one part of regulatory penalties where I'm just giving an example of how easy it was for most of my students to mess this up. So they had incurred the penalty, but they had to pay it over the next 10 years because the regulator had given them that option of, okay, you can pay it over 10 years. A lot of my students have end up saying, okay, split the expense over 10 years. And I was like, what accounting is this? Have you forgotten the accruals concept? Just because I can't pay it right now, and the main focus of that point was you need to discount your liability to bring it to its present value. And even today, 99% of my students, when I do the question with them the first time, they're unable to pick that up. So, it's basic reporting and accounting knowledge that is a very huge reason of not being able to get through the exam as well.
Right. So there's a question by 𝗏𝗏𝗪𝗏. It's a big question.
I've read it. Yeah.
Yes.
So, Junaid, can I quickly ask, are you studying with any learning partner at the moment? Then I could sort of direct you accordingly. Are you studying on your own? If you're studying on your own, I'll give you a separate answer. Could I just quickly have a clarification whether it doesn't have to be SKANS? I'm just talking about anyone. Are you just getting support with your learning, or are you preparing for yourself? I'm just going to wait and see if he gives me the answer. Yeah. I'd be able to tailor my recommendation accordingly, because Junaid, all the topics that you've mentioned, they are very, very important. So I would, okay. All right, Junaid, that's fine. So this is what you need to do. For topics like forensic audit, I'm going to give you quickly a checklist of what you should know. You should know the difference or the definitions of forensic accounting, forensic investigation, and forensic audit. So 3 terms. You should know the matters that you need to consider before you accept this engagement, and the procedures need to be tailored to the scenario. So there's half learning and half scenario based. The learning portion you can do from any textbook that you're using. It could be BBP, it could be Kaplan, anything at all. For fraud, there's not much that needs to be done because it's primarily scenario-based, but you need to learn the reporting and the responsibilities of the auditors. So there are about 7-8 points regarding what the auditors need to do regarding fraud detection, and then the reporting responsibilities. So we report it internally, and then we have to report it to the shareholders and see if external reporting is required. Money laundering, you need to learn the stages of money laundering and contents of an anti-money laundering program. Plus, you need to be able to talk about reporting that takes place. So if I suspect my client of money laundering, I can't tip them off. I have to report this to my own firms, MLRO, etc., etc. All of this is going to be in whichever textbook you're using. The last topic that you mentioned has been coming up very, very frequently, by the way. So there was one question, it's with the name of Eddie. Look for it on the ACCA website. There were 15 marks where she said, this is the information, tell me what I need to communicate to those charged with governance and answer that for 15 marks. So please understand that communicating with those charged with governance is an auditing standard. There are 4 areas you need to communicate. I'm not going to revise them because then everyone else is going to fall asleep. But there are 4 areas that you need to communicate. If you know those areas, then you have to apply them to the scenario. So to answer your question, for all the topics that you've mentioned, when we're finished with this, you can obviously listen to this entire session again and go over what you need to cover. This is a mix of knowledge and scenario-based preparation that you have to do. And yes, you need to spend time on this. All of this is very likely to come up in the near future. These are very important topics. They're not stuff that you can skip. So ISAs are the basic, obviously, source, but that's not feasible for you to go through them. So then use the textbook. Had you been with SKANS, I would have directed you to the exact video that watch these videos, and then you cover these topics automatically. But you can do them from whichever textbook you're using.
Right. So I think for students, even who are getting support right now, because many of the classes have ended, because it's like only, as you have said, there's only a week left in the examination. So this is a follow-up for students who are getting their tuition from an institute and those who are studying online. And this was somewhat answered before as well, that how can a student mark his own attempt or his own attempt for an exam and compare it with the examiner's answer? As you said, that it's not completely what the examiner is looking for, it's the entire thing which the examiner thinks is acceptable as an answer. So how would you comment on this?
I think you put the marking guide in front of you. So for any published paper, the marking guide is there. So she would say it is 2 marks per business risk. That's right at the end of the standard solution. And then she would bullet the main business risks that should have been covered. So if you think you've covered those areas, then it's judgment on whether you think your explanation was good enough by comparing it to the standard answer. Did you talk about at least 2 problems the business could face? If yes, you give yourself 2 out of 2. So standard solution needs to be read later. First, mark yourself against the marking guidelines at the end of the paper, and then read the standard solution to see how you could have improved the expression or the terminology that you were using.
Right. Okay. So as the student had mentioned in the previous question, that he is watching videos and he is practicing papers and he is basically getting his resources online. So the question that I wanted to put forward is, what is the risk, you can say, from getting your knowledge from online sources which are not, you can say, approved by ACCA?
I think, honestly, Bilal, I think it's just the fact that you would not be preparing with the exam in mind. I love the internet because it has a lot of knowledge resources, and I think they work very well for academic qualifications. But when this is a professional exam like ACCA, the videos need to be focused on the exam and exam techniques. So I think I always feel, and even if I wasn't working with SKANS, even if I was completely freelancing, for all papers, whatever, my answer would be that if you're taking a professional exam, be it ACCA, ICW, CMA, CF, it doesn't matter. It's important that you go for the approved learning partners and content, mainly because ACCA or CMA or ICW have seen something and improved that. So it sort of brings focus to your entire preparation. But again, there's nothing to worry about. I'm sure there are plenty of resources available even at this point in time. So briefer resources that you can look at to bring focus. For example, and Bilal, I'm not selling this at all, but I genuinely believe that at this point in time, and I think Aasim has asked a similar question as well, at SKANS eCampus, there are 2 separate short courses, which is there's the revision game, and then there are exam techniques, right? Exam success, is that what we call it? Which only talk about the specific topic-wise answering techniques that you should know. So maybe find courses like that, which can help you wrap up your last-minute preparation. Ask them also to answer your question. If you don't want to sort of, watch those, because although they're very brief, they're very to the point, literally topic-wise divided. If you feel that requires more time at this point in time, then your last-minute preparation has to be reading the answers. So if you've done your basic preparation, and you're not, you don't want to spend time or money on, maybe a paid product at this point in time, then the best thing you can do is open the answers to the revision kit and understand the techniques from there. It'll take a bit more time, but you will eventually be able to understand the techniques that you're expected to follow in every exam.
Right. That, I think, would be the last comment that we are taking. So if we go about some concluding tips, if you can give out some concluding tips for students who are going to appear in the AAA exams, and they just want those final, you can say, the tips, because there are always students looking for tips. So
true. I think AAA is very predictable, because in the syllabus, she's told you what's going to come up, right? So you can't really say, I didn't know risk was going to be there. I didn't know procedures were going to be there. It's always going to be there. So at this point in time, if you've done your basic preparation, please attempt at least 100-mark exam by hand. Keep in mind the tips that I spoke about, because they will help you evaluate whether you were able to manage your time, whether you know the techniques, etc. If you've done that as well, if you've taken the mock exam as well, then please just focus on reading the answers. Because in the exam, in terms of time management techniques, what would work is, I pick up the word, the client is importing a key raw material, and I instantly think of, okay, whenever I did risk on importing of key raw material, I could talk about IAS 21. I could talk about retranslation at the year end of monetary items. I could talk about gain on loss being in the P&L, because I've read the answers in such a way that I don't have to think, what should I be writing about this? I can just literally write it down. So in terms of the next 7-8 days, please, if you haven't done a mock exam, do at least one mock exam. It could be the latest past paper. Print that off and do it. It's the March one, which is available on the website. And read as much as you can, only the answers. There's no point in reading textbook right now. You only need to be focusing on reading the standard answers. That's basically what's going to happen.
Right. Thank you. So there's a final thing that we just wanted to conclude on the same note of Aasim, who was asking for any product that we are offering at SKANS eCampus. So there are currently, you can say, 3 products that we are offering. And the first is the comprehensive study support, which is 3 to 4 months complete guide and complete study support, which we are offering for AAA. Then we also have another product, which is the revision game, which is for those who just want to revise and they have studied once the AAA exam and they do not want to get into the detail, but they want to get the summarized version, or you can say the the crux of the whole paper, along with the practice material and the practice debrief. So that product is for them. Then there's another product, which is the exam success product, which just talks about the examination techniques. So the techniques which Afaf was just mentioning here, those techniques are just in that product, which is for those students who have completely covered their syllabus of the AAA exam, and they just want to know the examiner's mind, and they will just want to get those easy marks and get the technique of attempting in paper, so they are able to complete the paper and hopefully get success and a good score in the exam. So these are the three products that SKANS Ecampus is offering. And with this, we are going to conclude the session. And thank you to everyone for joining in. Thank you, Afaf, for giving out your precious time and giving out the tips to the students and those who are going to listen to this recorded session. It's definitely going to be very helpful for them to get a good score in their AAA exam. And thank you all for joining, and goodbye.
Thank you, everyone. Goodbye, stay safe, bye.